addresses. They can be sums, they can be booleans, but you build these entities up based on sort of your source data. Now, all of these are out of the box, and so if an analyst wants to build some more, they can, but we've really done a good job here of trying to capture most of what you're going to see on a network, so that's easy to get up to speed. So I've got the process entity actually highlighted here, and some of those fields should look familiar to you guys if you're familiar with your underlying carbon black data. And so I've brought in a bunch of the features that I found in the carbon black logs and built this process so that we can visually see the linkages as we get down a little bit deeper. And something we're all very familiar with, an IP address, is another out-of-the-box entity that we have. And just highlighting, we've got some booleans there. We can do some good stuff in the back end to see if it's a DNS server, to see if it's a web server, and maybe is it internal, external. So we could do all those sorts of things as we are ingesting the data. Any questions there? Okay. So this is the risk dashboard that Eli was highlighting in his last slide, and this is the analyst's primary interface, providing that overall assessment of risk across my network and across the kill chain there on the top. It allows the analyst to quickly view any notifications of risk behavior and actually the specific detections that added up to those overall risk scores. From this dashboard, as I said, we can view those risk behaviors that really extend beyond the traditional SIEM capabilities, right? I'm not just having an alert here for a bad IP address or a bad login. I'm actually seeing the risks associated with some of Sqrrl's analytics and how the entities are actually scored on risk also. So since this is my analyst's primary interface, I'm going to actually just focus on this one lateral movement detection that we have here. And so when I click on any entity, I can get into this profile view. And this is meant to be a single pane of glass, providing me just all the relevant information sort of in a very quick, easy to understand interface. And we can see all the information related to this detection. Anytime I see a risk score, I can actually sort of hover over that risk score and get a good idea of what actually added up to make that risk score what it is, a 77 here. You can see the different kinds of logins in this ladder graph here. I've got a regular user, I've got an anonymous login, and I've got an administrator login. Those sort of in this chain here make this suspicious, and so that gives me some uptick in my risk score. The timing, I don't see any timing here, but in the background, Sqrrl determined, hey, that timing of these different logins is actually suspicious, and the login account seems to be normal, so there's not a high number of logins across the board here. Before I move on, note this 3845 user. It'll show up a little bit later for us. And from this profile view, I'm now going to step into Sqrrl's Explore interface, where I can actually start doing a lot more investigation, a lot more hunting. So as we drive down, I see the same exact graph that we had before. And as analyst, I want to start asking questions. I want to start querying the data on that Sqrrl's brought in for me. And so I want to know actually what all these hosts, what they resolve to. As I was showing you that meta model in the background and all those relationships, the lines between the entities, my context menu over here actually shows me anytime that I select a specific entity, it actually shows me those relationships that are related to that entity. So I can quickly ask those questions without making any new queries. They're built for me, the data's ingested, and it's there real time for me. So I can actually go ahead and take a look at, all right, here's my internal addresses that those guys resolve to, all right? And as I'm walking down through that, I'm looking at this lateral movement detection here, and I want to now see, all right, the other part of the kill chain, or one of the other analytics that Sqrrl has here, is a beacon. And so before any lateral movement, a beacon probably happened. And as the analyst, I'm curious, sorry, in this blast radius, and what I'm looking at here, do I actually see any other beaconing? Do I see beaconing behavior? So if I'm going to select the IP addresses, and I'm going to then take a look at, all right, are there any actually beacons that Sqrrl detected through the analytics on the back end? And yes, I see a handful. Still don't have an exact clear picture of what's going on here, because a beacon, as we know, connects out to the internet. So I want to actually see what are my external addresses here that are related to these different beacons. And so just to focus my graph, we're going to look at just beacons related to external IP addresses. We see a bunch of different beacons here, and we see some brand new things we brought into the graph, some external IP addresses. And so I see this guy down here is actually related to 3 different beacons. So I'm going to focus over here just for a second, you know, at my first cut of my questions of what's actually suspicious. So I want to verify this guy, or take a look at where this guy actually resolved to. And I can actually go ahead and resolve and see that he's heading out to 3322.org. And that's a well-known dynamic DNS provider in China that has just historically been a hosting site for a lot of crimeware, or, you know, bad malware. And so what we're doing is I actually walked down through that lateral movement detection and found an IP address and a domain name that is actually suspicious. You know, a traditional network analyst workflow might stop there. I mean, it seemed pretty quick in my demo, but it actually might be where we stopped. You know, we have considerable evidence now that I've seen a lateral movement, and I've actually seen some beacons talking out to different points on my network. And I could turn this over to my, you know, network remediation team, and as the analyst, my job would probably be done. But having Carbon Black's endpoint intelligence here integrated with this hunt, I can actually then continue down to the next level, and we're going to discover what processes and actually what accounts were other contributing factors to this attack. And so the rest of the data in my demo here is actually underlying Carbon Black data. It looks seamless. You wouldn't know that unless I told you, which is definitely a good thing. So I'm going to focus over here because I see this administrator login, and so I'm going to focus on that part of this lateral movement chain here, and I'm going to pull up another relationship that is processes on a watch list. So what I did is I made a relationship that said, all right, anytime I see a process on a watch list inside of Carbon Black, I'm going to actually highlight them and be able to pull them back on a host-based level. And you know, typically, if I expanded on a host, I would see thousands of nodes. And I have an example if you guys really want to see. I would see thousands of processes, sorry. But we actually have, not in this demo, but I actually have a really interesting anomaly detection feature that I could filter out and just maybe find things that were on a watch list, or find things that were, that matched a certain feature set that I was looking for. But since we're concerned about beacons and network connections, I actually want to see if any of these processes made any suspicious connections to any of these other external addresses that I've brought into my relationship here. So while I'm still selected on processes, or I was still selected on processes, I'm going to actually go ahead and look and see what process is actually connected to IP addresses there. All right, so that single IP, that PHP that's been named pretty funny is actually a Zeus, well-known Zeus file name, and actually see that he's made connections from that C586 out to this suspicious IP address as we're looking down through here. You know, that it is a strangely named file, and if we actually had a little bit deeper integration with the threat feed list that could have been highlighted, but any analyst should know that that is a very strange looking file name and would set off a bunch of red flags.
It's this is David, by the way. It's probably, since you were just talking about the, maybe we could have a little deeper integration. It's probably nice to point out that what we are doing right now is just a prototype, and we did a few of the integrations that we thought would be useful, but we did not try to do all of them. So for example, you could think of us using the same kind of data to drill down and not only do what Ross did here to say, like, we believe that this is a suspicious network connection. Now let's find the process that made the network connection so that we can, clean up that host. But also you can do other things, like, for example, you might walk the process creation tree up until you find out how that process came to be instantiated on that particular host anyway, and kind of do like the beginnings of the root cause analysis. And this is, I think, something that you guys do already a lot with your platform. You can take in the graph view, then be able to do something like, well, let's see now what other computers on my network have the same process. Maybe they didn't connect to the same command and control IP, so we haven't found them yet, but they might have the same process. Or using some of the characteristics of that process, like the signer or the path that it was loaded from, or something like that. Find out where all those other IOCs are on your network just by clicking through the graph here.
Out of curiosity, what's the method that you're using to pull the data out of Carbon Black right now?
So we actually had a couple different methods that we tried. I guess they're pretty much the same method as far as how we actually get the data out. We're using the event forwarder that you guys provide.
Cool. Okay. It seems to sync exactly with what you're trying to do, so that's why I was wondering.
Yeah. It works really great for us because on the ingest side, we ingest JSON, and the output side, the event forwarder provides the exact format already that we need. So we can just take the file, all we have to do is get it into HDFS somehow and get it into a Hadoop, and then we can just suck it up and read it.
Gotcha. Cool.
Yeah,
right,
bringing
awesome.
those logs in was quite easy. So thumbs up. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, I mean, there's so many cool ways that you can integrate in, even deeper. I mean, this is super awesome already, and I don't mean to interrupt, by the way. If you're not done, I will shut up and you can continue.
You can keep talking. I can pause and continue whenever I need to. So. Okay.
No, cool. This is super awesome. I mean, the ability to see all this data in one place is just like, it's like the dream come true for, I mean, I've been looking at this data since we started Carbon Black, and seeing it in this graph form is just absolutely phenomenal. There's lots of cool things that I can think of right off the top of my head from what you were talking about. I think you already just mentioned, the ability to, do further context refinement based on the data that maybe historically Carbon Black had. Also, an integration with all of the live response features that we have. I mean, taking action from here would be super cool. Anyway, just a lot of thoughts coming in my head. I'm super excited to hear the rest of the demo. This is really neat stuff.
Yeah, as David mentioned, I just took some quick points as a prototype, integration here. I can see just the richness of the logs I'm getting from that forwarder, and yeah, can imagine walking process trees, providing, as Eli was calling them, upticks to the risk score based on some of your watch list hits. I mean, those all things just make this picture so much clearer to the analyst and to the hunter.
Yeah, and this is all, this integration prototype work is all focused on the interactive analysis piece, and we didn't really even begin to scratch the surface on the back-end analytics that we could actually do on those data that we're getting from the Carbon Black sensors. I mean, that's an incredibly rich source that we're we have some definite ideas about what things that we would like to do, but I feel like that this is the sort of thing, like as we get more into it, we'll come up with even better ideas that kind of marry the network and the application and the endpoint data domains.
Sweet.
All right, so I'll step back to my demo. So at this point, you know, I may want to save my investigation and turn it over to the remediation team, right? I've got some bad known IP addresses. I've got a bad process or a suspect process and a host that looks like he's got some bad things on him. Inside of Sqrrl, I can actually see everything I just did in that demo. I can actually save and annotate, you know, and I can share that off with somebody else. So if you think about, I'm an analyst, I'm done, I'm going to turn it over to my remediation team. How do I actually tell them what I found or what I just did? I can save this. They come back in a Sqrrl. They can run the same exact thing and see what I just got, and we could have, you know, an intelligent discussion around how I got there, the process flow, and let them then remediate based on that larger discussion. A really, really neat feature. Calls into training your SOC guys too. First level, third level, you're training them on their own data and helping them understand maybe where they took a left turn instead of a right turn, or coming back to investigation days later and actually continuing it if they were on break, or turning it over to the next shift because it's not done. So this feature is a minor feature, but I think there's a lot of positives in building up a SOC and sharing information just to make everybody smarter on our data, on your data. So I say all that, but as the analyst, I might want to actually dive different into it more. You know, as Dave was talking, if this was a much more complete integration, I would start walking process paths. I would start looking for that process on other machines. But I want to show a different technique or a starting point for an investigation. You know, we started at some of that lateral movement detection or beacon detection, but there are times when I just have an IP address. I have a host name. I have a bad domain name that I either learned from my SIEM, or I, you know, just have a hunch that something bad is going on here. So I'm actually going to take this file, and we're going to just drop it into the search bar here, and we're going to hop into the profile view, which I kind of showed you originally with that lateral movement. But I'm just going to hop into the profile view here, and you know, this could be an IP address, this could be an account, and I kind of see that first level blast radius around there about what's actually going on. I didn't highlight this earlier, but I can actually see all the raw data too. So, you know, analysts like to see the raw data, like to kind of trust but verify that what I'm actually seeing in my graph is in my table formats. But I can actually look down, and if you're familiar with the carbon black logs, these all should look very familiar. I can start seeing my GUIDs, I can start seeing my MD5s, all other things that are there that I just haven't fully integrated yet inside this demo. So at any point in time in my investigation, you can actually drop down to the raw data. It's a really, really interesting feature also. So here, I'm sort of at that first level view of what host names, what accounts, and what IP addresses are actually involved in that, with that bad PHP there. And we did see a lot of these same things, but this is a little bit more focused because I'm coming in with, you know, just one IOC or one IP address. I'm going to hop back into that Explorer interface, but now I only have that first level blast radius there, and I'm going to run, just quickly sort of run that demo in the same exact sort of hunt, but just with this smaller subset of that data. And so we want to find, you know, once again, we're going to find any of those IP connections, right? Host name connected to IP address. Once again, that's actually coming from the carbon black logs. In a deeper integration, you know, Sqrrl might be providing some of that connections, but I'm actually also getting that from the carbon black logs there. And so we see, you know, I've got that, once again, I've got that connection between 118 and C586, and I, can also expand, the processes that I saw before. And one more step I want to make there is I can actually then see what accounts ran those processes. All right, so if we just rearrange a little bit, we can see that, as we look for what's going on here, I see that, remember I told you to keep in mind that 3845. I can actually see that 3845 ran that PHP, but he's also run some other things, Skype. He's also run CC Cleaner, and I can see that this demo account on the 395 machine actually was running the same process. So to David's point, I found possibly another machine or another user that was actually compromised, and I can continue to go down through that. So a little bit different way to get at the data, but it just showing you sort of the versatility of being able to get into the Sqrrl interface or the Explorer interface for the hunt a lot quicker. And so
sorry.
Go for it.
I just had a quick question. This is something that I've always struggled with. It's kind of more generic question. It's the relational view, right? I was wondering how you handle, like layering on top, like the temporal dimension, if you will. Like how do these events and relationships relate to each other in per unit time, right? Like, I don't know if you address that at all in your interface, or I'm just kind of curious what your thoughts are on that.
Sorry, my GoToMeeting was hiding.
So
Go ahead.
I could talk a little bit about that. That's something that we are kind of working on as well. So we have some pieces of the product where we handle that through our layout algorithm. If you think back to the profile page that Ross originally clicked on to show the original lateral movement, that's arranged by order of the transactions that actually occurred that made up the lateral movement. In the graph here, that is not always the case. When you go from the profile into the full exploration, the graph exploration view, it starts off with the same view, so it takes that temporal piece and translates it right in here. But then after that, right now, we don't have that, but it's something that we're looking at for layout algorithms. Also, we have on our roadmap some timelining features so that we can kind of help take all that information now that you've found in the graph view and then assemble it back into that kind of timeline view.
Gotcha. Cool. Okay.
Guys, I'm sorry. This is Luis Maldonado. I joined a little bit late. I apologize. It was not at the beginning of the meeting, but since I jumped in, I just wanted to add a couple of things here. So as David was saying, some of the layout aspects around the temporal capabilities we have, we're still looking at how those play out from visualization, but the temporal aspects are absolutely part of everything we do. So as your logs are coming in, we're actually looking at either event time. We can use the times, multiple different times within each log line to actually pull in what's notable. And then we've got filtering, which I don't know if we showed early in the demo, multiple places where you can filter either activities where we're looking at specific behaviors or an overall set of risk scores. You can kind of tune your window for where you're looking for. And this sort of temporal attribution we feel is huge when it comes to people understanding what's going on at this point in time. There's a lot of analysts that are opening their window investigation from an hour to a day to a week and and then 6 months as they go and look for the deeper analysis. So it's definitely there. And as I think what the guys are showing is there's a little bit more in terms of just showing the visuals in that timelining that is coming to play. We're doing it in some of the detection results, like in lateral movement, where you see things kind of cascading in a time-oriented fashion. But there's definitely some more there. So I just wanted to add a little bit of color there as well.
Cool.
All right, so the last thing I have is I actually took and I built some dashboards to try to highlight, you know, the carbon block endpoint data that and Sqrrl's dashboard capabilities in some unique ways to present the carbon black data. So these Sqrrl dashboards have multiple different visualization options and really can be customized to display any underlying query that we want to run. And so this is yet just another starting point into that hunt. This tab for this dashboard is carbon black data specific. And I kind of want to highlight this one over here, which I think is very interesting. You know, processes with connections to risky endpoints. So we see that bad PHP there. And so I created this dashboard by actually taking a look at some IOC hits and then highlighting up for this dashboard what processes and the endpoints that were on those IOCs or those threat lists, and bringing them up here so that the analyst actually can dive into them a lot quicker, right? These are all interactive. I can click on them, and I get back into that same exact profile view that I wanted to or was started with. Another thing, rare endpoint processes. You know, as David has been speaking a lot about, you may see processes across your network named different things doing the same thing or going to the same exact IP addresses, but they may be named a little bit different. So they're not actually going to float up to the top 10 list. I'm kind of looking at a bottom 10 list here, bottom 4 list, sorry, showing just sort of the rare endpoint processes. Top 5 accounts, you know, showing that I can peel out of my carbon black data where I've actually seen multiple different accounts, and then unsigned files, kind of mining a little bit more data out of the carbon black where you guys are actually signing or seeing if the file is signed or not signed. I'm bringing forward some unsigned files here that could or could not be something that we want to investigate. So hopefully you guys saw that by combining, you know, Sqrrl's ontology graph and our linked data model with the carbon black endpoint intelligence, we actually, in multiple different ways, gained a quicker, deeper understanding of this infection that we may not have easily have gotten to if we were actually not integrated and sitting on 2 different systems and my analyst had to pivot or write down on a piece of paper all these different things. So any questions about what you guys just saw?
Nope.
Great.
Ross, thanks for the demo. I think it was a really good, you know, we had a lot of questions throughout, but yeah, I love the fact that this doesn't feel like a connector. It feels like a true integration, which is, again, phenomenal.
Yeah, and you know, just to add, some of these were already highlighted, but you know, some of the things that we're planning to roll out in upcoming releases, you know, include process level analytics, which you know, David mentioned, for folks that have those data sources available, but also you know, deeper threat intel integrations, you know, optimally with Carbon Black's threat intelligence feed as part of that, and also external detections impacting and upticking our risk scores, such as Carbon Black's detections.
That's perfect.
Hey guys, this is Paul. I got a couple quick questions for you. Who else are you integrating with at the endpoint, and how do you feel like we're different or not different or better or worse? What's your feeling there? And then how can we provide you with better data, whether it's a change in the interface or it's different, the actual data set itself? Like how can we make this more valuable for you?
Well, this is our first endpoint integration, so you know, we're hoping to get this one out there and start running with it. So we don't have any other ones you know, that we're currently working on.
Great.
I'll let Ross or David or others comment on, you know, what they might need in terms of other types or additional data sets from.
Yeah,
And also how can we help you from the API development side? It sounds, you know, I'm glad the event forwarder worked out of the box for you. That's really awesome. But definitely want to know if there's anything else we can do to help you out.
Yeah, I could probably talk a little bit about that. Go ahead, Russ.
Yeah, so Dave and I have talked about it, and I'd love to have next steps where we actually sit down and understand better what's coming out of the event forwarder, or how I can actually make direct API calls. As I said, I only mapped a couple of the fields, and it would be a great next step to be able to sit down with you guys. David, any other comments on that?
Yeah, I think that I see two categories of data integrations with Carbon Black. Just talking about the data, not even talking about the live response kind of aspects, right? The first is I think the easiest one is things like your watch list entries, which are kind of akin to like alerting kind of things. Like we know that we think this is bad because it's on a watch list for some reason, the threat intelligence feed matched, or maybe we set up a watch list, kind of like a specific rule for things that we're interested in knowing about. The other one, though, is a lot of the kind of things that we were bringing in this demo we're more interested in collecting a lot of more raw data events. And one thing that we could use a little bit of help on is figuring out how much raw data from the endpoints it's feasible to collect at an enterprise scale. So, for example, you could conceivably in Sqrrl store and process all of the process start and stop information from all the endpoints and servers in an enterprise. We have the storage and we have the analytic capability to access that and do something with it in a reasonable amount of time. But I'm not sure if that's actually a feasible amount of data to collect from the endpoints. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I unfortunately have to run. I've got a 12:30. But I do want to have that conversation. We have some very large customers using the event bus, like you're using with the event forwarder, and collecting all of the information. So that's not just the process start and stops, but also all the reg mods, all the file mods, all the network connections, every single event that we collect, they're processing it. And so you can absolutely do it on a large scale.
Okay.
So let's definitely schedule a meeting. I'd love to sit down and talk to you about scale and field types and getting into the rest of the APIs and stuff. We can continue. We can do the scheduling over email or whatever is most convenient. But as soon as we can, I'd love to get that conversation started.
That sounds
yeah, definitely. I wouldn't expect that we'd solve all that on this call, but it's nice to know that it's feasible anyway, and then we can figure out how to get it done later.
Absolutely. Cool. Well, I've got to drop off, unfortunately, but I will. I'll follow up on my side with Jim and get a time together with all the interested parties on the technical side to have those discussions and get you set up with whatever you need.
Sounds good.
Cool. Again, this is awesome, super stuff. I will can't wait to talk more. I'll see you guys later. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. All right.
I think a lot of us have to probably jump here pretty soon. Just realized the timing on it, but do appreciate it. This has been great.
Great. So Jim, I'll follow up with you, probably on Monday, and we can talk more about next steps.
Absolutely, because this is a key part. Like I said, for some of the marketing and just being able to talk about this a little bit. There's some other things that we're doing internally that I want to catch you up on as far as how we're getting this information to the internal audience as well. So yeah, let's definitely follow up on Monday, and this will be great. And you guys, I really appreciate putting this together. I mean, this has been I think really helpful to us, and love seeing what you've done. That's incredible.
Great. All right. Well, have a great weekend, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Bye.
Eli, got 1 second?
Who? Sorry, was someone asking for me?
Somebody was.
Hey, Eli, this is still Jim. So Ian Lee was.
Okay.
So I'll have Ian follow up with you, probably directly, but after this.
Okay, that sounds good. I have another meeting stacked up right behind this, but I could talk at 1:00 if that works.
I think so. Let me just text him that, and I'll have him catch up with you. So.
All right.
Perfect.
Sounds good.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
All right, thanks. Bye.